in 1997, it was 96, 97, we were working on Starship Troopers, Dante's Peak, Spawn, films like that. And out of the blue, I get a call from Jim. I get a text page while I'm on location or on the set for Spawn, which I was not having a good time on. And he said, come down to Mexico and be in the movie. I was, odd that he even remembered and thought of me. I joke that I may have been the only Asian person he knew of that age that might
Wait, were you a DEI hire?
Apparently. So I took a week off.
Titanic Talk with Nelson Aspen and Alexandra Boyd. Here we feature stories from the independent documentary Ship of Dreams, Titanic Movie Diaries, and everything to do with the iconic ship. From James Cameron's epic, groundbreaking movie to the history and legacy of Titanic herself. Actors, historians, authors, descendants, and fans come here to talk about Titanic. This is your first-class ticket to everything aboard the Ship of Dreams.
It is unbelievable to us that we are this far in season 2 of Titanic Talk, that we could be wrapping up the season, but we're going to go out with a bang. Here I am with my talented and lovely co-host, Alexandra Boyd, the filmmaker behind Ship of Dreams, Titanic Movie Diaries, and we have a very special guest connected to the Titanic film, which made Alexandra have her initial interest in the Ship of Dreams. On that note, Alexandra, will you do the introductions?
I will. I'm very excited about this guest because not only is he very, very strongly connected to James Cameron and his work and his legacy, and going back in time, he's been part of one of my favorite James Cameron movies, which is controversial because it's not Titanic. And he's an actor, because everybody listening to this will know who Van Ling is. He is the Chinese man who is featured quite, to those eagle eyes who've watched the film so many times, or watched all of the deleted scenes, which thank God I'm in a few of those. Van Ling, welcome to Titanic Talk.
Yay!
We're so excited to be able to chat to you and delve a little deeper into the VFX, which is really your world.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's fantastic. And what I would like to do to filmmakers listening, or people who really want to get into film and do the kind of work that you do, they might not feel they're actors or writers or directors, but there are so many jobs that make up a film production, without which there would be no film. And your department certainly rings true in that. What, first of all, back in the 80s drew you to well, I'm thinking like it can't be the 70s because we didn't have digital film. It was all 24 frames a second and on celluloid. What drew you to this medium, and how did you get started?
Well, the 70s really got me started. Star Wars was obviously a pivotal film in my life. I was 13 when Star Wars came out. Huge thing, of course. And it revolutionized movies in the way that in 75, Jaws kind of was the first quote unquote summer blockbuster and populist movie. At that time, that was of its type, breaking all sorts of records. It was the first film to, I think, $100 million, which is hilarious thinking about it today, given inflation and just the way the media has changed. Star Wars was a huge thing for me. And one of the other seminal things going through high school, and then I graduated in 82, the year there were a ridiculous number of big kind of science fiction genre films that came out. That was a huge thing. That was the summer that Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan, Tron, Road Warrior, Conan the
Mommy
Barbarian,
dearest.
and it's
Sexy Mommy Dearest, those eyebrows, they must have been a lot to work on.
well, there was this really big boom of stuff that was right up my alley, and so it was really fantastic to and E.T. and Poltergeist. So
Were you
all
an
different
artist?
genres.
Were you an artist? Were you drawing? Were you sketching?
I was a student of filmmaking, and I went to USC Film School after I graduated in '82. I was fortunate enough to get into the film school here in Los Angeles, and did my 4-year undergrad there. And during that process, in 1984, there was a class, and there was this class every semester where it's called Thursday Night at the Movies. And what it really is that one of the faculty members would bring in a film that was currently just releasing or about to be released. And he would bring in the filmmakers to talk about it. And
what a fantastic opportunity, and one of the reasons why you'd want to go to USC. You know, with no matter how great a school is, the proximity of USC lends itself to that incredibly. So who were some of your Thursday night specials?
Oh, we had all sorts of people. You know, from oh gosh, I'm trying to remember all the folks, but obviously the most important one that happened to me was this unknown independent filmmaker who came in with a little movie called The Terminator, and it was a revelation. You know, it had emotional depth, but it was also full of action, and it was gritty and uncompromising, but at the same time had a lot of heart. So it was it had a lot of effects in it, and makeup effects, and it was a quote unquote low budget film at the time, considered, and a lot of people, you know, look at this kind of film even in those days as, oh, well, it's kind of schlocky because it's not the high glossy visual effects films that, you know, ILM does or anything like that. But it was this gritty film that really struck a chord. That was in October, I believe, of 1984. And I remember this young bearded guy coming out, you know, talking about the film. And what struck me about him was he wasn't just, you know, talking about the movie. He was talking about practical things that students might be interested in. Oh, well, the little Mexican boy at the end of the film, we had 3 different boys playing that kid because we had to shoot with the actor that you see his face for his close-ups talking to Linda Hamilton in the Jeep. And then we were a low budget film, and we realized that we needed to get the reverses on her. He wasn't available anymore, and we had to shoot the reverses on her again. And so we found another kid, and we only showed him from the back. And then we had to fake up the shirt because that was his shirt, and because we weren't able to bring him back, his parents weren't going to allow him to give us the shirt. So we had to figure out and rematch the shirt, and also because the voices didn't match, we had to just dub it with a third person. And those are the kind of things that is kind of obvious today, but it was a revelation that, oh, well, yeah, you can just do this. You can just change this. And I heard even more stories.
Constant problem solving. That's what I always feel like on my set, or the things I've learned, because I'm really a baby filmmaker, is that you create this scene or this place or a location. You've got a bunch of actors there, and there's always a situation that's not quite what you anticipated. So you sort of, you know, you look to your crew or your producer or an actor to come up with an idea. The best idea wins. There's always this wonderful sort of conversation. I can totally imagine how that went down. But the t-shirt must have been a nightmare, because you suddenly realize the child's not wearing the right colored t-shirt, and you couldn't just color it in those days.
Yeah. I mean, this was all what you got on camera is what you had. And so it was really interesting to see the idea of just being ready to constantly improvise, to constantly kind of think about your story. What do I need to tell the story? What did I want to have, and what did I not have, but what do I need? You know, can I get at least what I need? And how it, you know, having it in your head to be able to say, okay, I know I can shoot the reverse this way, and I can do this, and we can do that tomorrow. Or, you know, I know how to do this. We can do an insert that'll sell this story point, and it won't feel like it was, a break in the story in some way. So
Ben,
that
I'm
kind
curious. I'm curious, but if you met Cameron initially in 1984, and then of course
I did not meet Cameron in '84. I was in the audience for this,
oh,
and I
but
saw this. I never spoke to him.
he did. Oh, he didn't. Okay, I thought maybe he was like
I mean,
leading a lecture of some sort.
he was being a filmmaker who was on the stage talking to the rest. This isn't a small class.
Yeah,
This was an entire 400, 500 seat theater, and
did he remember that event when you eventually met him later?
I think he did, but I was just a face in the crowd. I didn't know him from Adam. I didn't go up and talk to him because every week I've been sitting here doing this, listening to filmmakers and so on, talking. And so what struck me, and I remember this distinctly, finishing watching the movie, listening to him talk, and I just said, if I ever get a chance to work with a filmmaker, a real filmmaker out there, it would either be him or Terry Gilliam, because Brazil was coming out, and I was a big fan of Time Bandits and some of the work he did, because it was kind of different. It felt very hands-on and very almost low budget, but it was also had these levels to it. So so it was.
I was sure you were going to say Spielberg, considering you named so many Spielberg films in your list there. I thought he would be on your wish list.
Well, I mean, those are a given for everybody, but in my case, that was halfway through my college term, and then I graduated in 1986, and that was the year that Aliens came out, and I remember one of the other my fellow students on the project I was working on was the son of a casting director, and so he had gotten a copy of the script. So we were poring over it, and I read it, and I was really impressed by it. Any script that starts with exterior space, the stars shining cold and remote like the love of God. That's what the first line of the script was. And so it was really well written. It was fun. It was not like esoteric, but it also wasn't pandering. And the storytelling was really good. I thought, this is great. I can't wait to see this movie. So I was a big fan. I was reading Starlog magazine and everything else that had anything about it. Opening day comes out in I think it was late July, and I saw it twice that day. Once in the morning, once in the evening, with some friends. And my college friends are always making fun of me for not so much for watching these kind of movies, but for being more obsessed than normal people are about these things. And after the evening screening I saw with some of my friends, one of them said to me, well, you seem to be into this kind of, effects and gadgets and stuff. He was in the film school with me, and he just said, I dare you to build a power loader, that walking machine.
Oh, yeah.
The yellow walking forklift in the movie. And I said, what, like a model? He goes, yeah, I'm having a Halloween. It's a gentleman's bet, no money, but I have a Halloween party coming up in a couple months at my apartment. And, so that's a gentleman's bet. And I said, okay. And so I spent the next couple months, because I had graduated, but I was living at my parents' house, working at my parents' garage, starting to build a little power loader.
But we're talking about special effects now and props, not VFX. You started
well, yeah, because visual effects in those days meant motion control and optical printers, which we generally didn't have access to. But could we build models? Could people build models? Sure. Could people, do small things? Absolutely. In my case, I decided to kind of go big, and I built a 7.5 foot costume. Since it was for Halloween, I built a 7.5 foot costume with rotating light on the top, and I motorized the claws so that they could. And I built it so the elbows would bend and the whole thing. There was no video back then. There was no ability to watch the film over and over again. All I had was photos from Starlog magazine and watching the movie. So
how did you get through the door, the dorm?
that was a challenge, actually.
And you're going to tell me that
So-
James Cameron was sitting there on the couch when you walked in?
No.
Shame.
But while we're building this, a couple of friends of mine who were helping me said, hey, you should show this to James Cameron. I'm going, yeah, right. How's that going to happen? It's, well, you've been calling the production offices for Gail Anne Hurd and James Cameron for all summer because you're looking for internships, right? PA positions, whatever. I go, yeah, but they never have anything, but they always said, hey, call back next month. So this month on Halloween 1986, I call Gail Anne Hurd's office, Pacific Western Productions, on the Fox lot, and asked the normal questions. Do you have anything? No, nothing yet, but call back. I said, and by the way, I have something interesting you might want to see, a Halloween costume. It's a power loader. The receptionist said, what? You mean like one you wear? I said, yeah, it's Halloween, right? Dead silence.
Oh my God.
Talking in the background. We got to see this. Come on down to Fox.
Oh my
the Fox
gosh.
lot. We'll leave you a pass.
Can I just say something that I say to young filmmakers all the time, because you have just encapsulated exactly what it takes to succeed and to move forward in this industry. It's a meritocracy. You have to have passion, you have to have skill, talent, yes, all of that stuff. But outside of that, you have to have a willingness, like you're calling and calling and calling.
Audacity.
Like, yes, and they're going to be pissed off. Eventually, they'll either call you in to bring you in to stop you calling, or you had this extra thing, which was this extraordinary costume. We've got to see it. Bring it in. That's what separates you and has built your relationship with a filmmaker like James Cameron over the decades, because everyone else is waiting for somebody to call them,
It's true. And it's like passion. You either have it or you don't. So what was the reaction when you got onto the Fox lot with this thing?
Well, to your point, it was about being proactive. Nobody's going to give you anything. You have to earn it, or you have to do it yourself. And, the tools we had back then, were the barriers to get to the professional film industry are much different than they are today. You can literally post things up to the world today on YouTube and network with people in ways that you couldn't before. It was you write letters, you do phone calls, you
walk in many people with the costume on.
Well, that was the weird thing. Like a vampire, I have to be invited. So I had to rent a pickup truck.
Yeah, I was like, how I'm going at logistics. How did you get there?
And my friends, a couple of friends who were there with me were like, okay, let's do this. And I had to go rent a pickup truck, figure out I designed it so that it would come apart. It was made out of like styrofoam and cardboard and foam core and like a wood frame, and had a battery pack in it and the whole thing. And so I had to be able to take it apart and put it back together. And so we rented this pickup truck, drove down the freeway, pieces flying off. And to get there, there's enough of it left that I pull into the parking lot next to their bungalow where the offices are, and they're all looking out the windows as we're putting this thing on me and my friends. And I finish it, and I'm standing there in this, and I'm twirling the arms and doing the whole thing. And Gail Anne Hurd walks out, and she says, "This is the best walking resume I've ever seen."
Wow!
And which
got chills.
It was an amazing honor. Jim was going to be there, but I was so late trying to get the truck and get there that he had to go off to a meeting. So Jim wasn't there that first meeting, but she was great, and because she came from Roger Corman, she understood what I guess it meant to try to put something together. It doesn't matter how crazy everybody thinks you are. And so she saw something that
you're hired.
It was a great.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't hired. They didn't have any projects, but it was a moment of validation, and then we talk
and a relationship. It's an industry of relationships, and that sealed your connection.
Well, but the cherry on top of it was, as I was preparing to leave, because I said, I got to go back to I got to go to USC now. I've got to win a bet with a friend, with this costume. And she said, okay, wait a minute. She goes back inside, comes out with Sigourney Weaver's jumpsuit and custom Reeboks, and says, you might as well make the costume complete. Just bring it back with all the same stains and dirt. Don't wash it. I was thin enough back then that I actually fit to Sigourney Weaver's jumpsuit. And so now I've got the actual costume from the movie inside my Halloween costume.
Amazing.
True story. So then it's like, okay, pack up. I'm going to drive over to my friend's apartment. So what we did was we parked the car with the car facing with the headlights. And we put on the costume out on the street with the car behind so it would silhouette it just like in the movie. And one of my friends who was with me went up and told my main friend who's having the party, who made the bet, that, oh, Van needs help bringing up his model. So he comes down, turns the corner, and sees the silhouette of this thing from just like the movie. So needless to say, I won the bet.
Even your mind was working cinematically just to bring it over. So
it's all about, storytelling, I guess. Go up to the party. We had to take the whole thing apart again to get into the elevator to get up to his apartment. We're sitting in the apartment talking, and we're listening to the music on the radio, and we hear an ad for a costume contest at a nightclub in Glendale.
Stop.
And so we were like, okay, we'll just go for it. So me and my other two friends who came with me put it back in the truck, drove to Glendale, had to, pieces flying off. We had to sit there and figure out how to glue things back together. But we were out in the parking lot. We're trying not to reveal it until we need to. So we're at the far end of the parking lot and trying to assemble it. And I'm going to walk across the parking lot in this thing to get to the front door to do this. And because the pieces are flying off, a friend of mine had a glue gun, and he would run in to the club bathroom, plug in the glue gun till it was hot, unplug it, and run like hell back out to the other end of the parking lot before it cooled, so we could get 1 or 2 squares to put the thing in. Long story short, I won first prize, which almost paid for the cost of renting the truck. And so then,
a great story.
So then I go on a trip with my family, and when I get back, there's an answering machine message, and it's Jim Cameron saying, "I hear you built a power loader worthy of note. I'd like to see it." He comes down in his Corvette, his black Corvette, to my parents' house, where he finds me working on another one of my friends who are still in school, working on a set for them, making foam core. He was building kind of like a 2001 capsule. He wanted some student filmmaking. And I'm doing this. Jim comes in and says, "Hey, you know how to do this kind of thing?" And he shows me how to cut foam core, because he started out at Roger Corman and doing foam core stuff as well. So we kind of bonded there. So we got to talking, and he found out that I was an honors student and I was interested. I do a lot of research stuff and all sorts of things like that. I showed him the power loader costume and stuff. It wasn't to scale. It was, smaller it wasn't 9 feet high. It was only 7 feet high. But he basically said, "Would you like to be my researcher? I'm starting on a new project called The Abyss." He hadn't written it yet. He had written it as a short story in high school, but he wanted to expand it into a film. But he needed research about fluid breathing, underwater salvage operations, naval procedures, things like that. And so he thought I might be a good candidate, and that's how I started with Jim.
Isn't it amazing? Just how the connections, the camaraderie, the serendipity of it all. And what I love about this story, because you hear so many stories about Jim Cameron and what he's like as a director, as a person, but this tale, Van, gives us a real insight into the human side of him and what made him bond with you. I mean, you bonded over a shared passion, and a good man, just really a human side that we don't often get to hear about. We're really grateful to have this story from you.
Yeah, he's a really sharp guy, but he can also be a really personable guy, especially back then, because remember, he had only done Terminator, and Aliens had just come out and was a big hit. As you know, he actually also wrote the screenplay for Rambo First Blood Part 2.
I didn't know that.
I did know that somewhere back in the memory banks.
And Stallone rewrote it and cut it in half by taking out almost all of his dialogue.
Oh, wow.
He just he didn't want to say too many words in the movie. So fair enough. But it was a different kind of thing. And it was on the basis of that, and having directed Terminator, that they gave them first the gig to write Aliens. And then after Terminator came out, the ability to direct it. So to see him come up through, he was driving school lunches in a truck when he was, starting out.
I think there's something valuable there too. I came up through the theater. I was actually a musical theater performer for a very brief time. I was a dancer, and then I sort of retrained as an actress. And we were encouraged to start our own theater company where we were literally sewing the costumes and hanging the curtains and creating the props and everything ourselves. That sort of analog, hands-on, no budget, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches training is kind of invaluable, I think. And sometimes the youth of today, Nelson, we like to talk about the youth of today in various forms. They think there's this straight A to B shot to success, or the dream job, or I've done many different jobs in this industry that has brought me to being a filmmaker, which actually took a bit too long as far as I was concerned. If I'd been offered the opportunity in my 30s, I'd have grabbed it, but there weren't any women directing movies when I was in my 30s. Anyway,
get us up to Titanic and explain what your role there was, aside from being the recognizable featured player.
Well, unfortunately there's a long story in between that, which is I worked with Jim for 8 years. I worked with him through The Abyss, in which I had like several credits on the show.
My favorite James Cameron movie, just watched it again. It's amazing. And just, I can link it to Titanic because there's so many moments in it that are like rehearsals for what you see in Titanic. Like the you're underwater, the doors going, the fantasy and imagination of what goes on deep under the ocean surface. I just love the film so much, and a huge crush on Ed Harris as well. So thank you.
It was an amazing learning experience as my first big feature film, where I was on set every day, and I was working all the way from pre-production through post as his kind of creative assistant, because I had introduced him to computers because I had gotten my first Apple Macintosh the same day I met Jim, and Jim ended up asking me to get one for him and be his computer consultant in the early years, which is hilarious. So we worked through The Abyss, and I was involved in a lot of, not only just the visual effects stuff, but some of the research stuff and the creative stuff and so on. And so I got to do something similar on Terminator 2, was on set, did all that kind of things, was basically the head of his production department at Lightstorm when they formed Lightstorm. And at a certain point, he knew, we had a discussion about what my future was going to be. And he said, I know you're interested in making films. If you want to do that, I only make, a film every 3 years, so, what you really need to do is one of two things. You have to decide, are you going to go into visual effects? In which case, maybe you should go and work for, my subsidiary company, Digital Domain, which we just started. And I was involved in the discussion there. Scott Ross seems to think I came up with the name Digital Domain, but I don't remember it like that. but so he said, Van, you should either consider going to work for DD, for me at DD, or you need to, if you want to direct, you need to get more on-set experience. And so I said, well, I'm going to take a page from what Jim would do, which is do the best of both worlds. And so what I did was I went and worked on other shows that used computers on the set. And what it was doing screen graphics. So I ended up working on films like Congo and Dante's Peak and Twister, where having computer screens were one of the characters in the film. I liken that kind of work to basically being the three yellow barrels in Jaws. where you save showing the shark for the moments A, when it's most dramatic, and B, when the mechanics were working. But in the meantime, you've got to use something to say, oh, it's there now, oh, it's coming, to create suspense. And so what we did was we did it through graphics. We had built a portfolio of doing graphics, and then they started saying, oh, can you do visual effects? I said, sure, because I came from a background in visual effects as well. So we started doing visual effects for movies and so on. And in 1997, it was 96, 97. We were working on Starship Troopers, Dante's Peak, Spawn, films like that. And out of the blue, I get a call from Jim. I get a text page while I'm on location or on the set for Spawn, which I was not having a good time on. And he said, come down to Mexico and be in the movie. I was, awed that he even remembered and thought of me. I joke that I may have been the only Asian person he knew of that age that
wait, were you a DEI hire? Were you a DEI hire? Then
apparently, I took a week off, went down to Mexico, where you guys were in the middle of production, and saw the amazing stuff. And it's like, yep, that's Jim, and building all this and everything. And he had invited me to be a part of it, and I was so amazed. And he said, so you're playing one of the Chinese passenger was found floating on a door, and we want to shoot that moment. So we were shooting in the small tank inside the stage where they were filming with Kate and Leo and everybody in the water, and they did the whole thing with the putting on the ice crystals and all that kind of stuff. You used footage of me from that pod from the special making of stuff in your film Ship of Dreams, and so I did that. It was like basically 1 day, 1 or 2 days of just doing that, and went back to work. And a couple months later, Jim calls and says, I want you to come back down here, since we established you in the end, with this end scene, we want to establish you earlier in the movie, so come on back down. So I came back in February for another week, and you guys are still in the middle of shooting. And we did all the scenes with walking through the hallways and the scene where they break through the gates.
And the real Titanic geeks love to remember that you weren't just an actor, but you were this colleague of Jim's, and that you had been called at the 11th hour and put in these scenes.
Well, one thing I want to point out, my friend who made the bet with me, I brought him along with me when we started The Abyss. His name was Ed Marsh.
Oh,
You're
my
a good
goodness.
friend.
And so, yeah, we worked on a lot of those films, and he worked on and off at Lightstorm with us for many years. And then after I left, he continued on and did a lot of these things for Jim, and was in the movie as well. And we both had cameos in Terminator 2 as well. It was a lot of fun doing all these things.
He's known for doing that, though, too. I remember sitting at the captain's table, and there was this English gentleman whose accent I recognized, and it was Peter Lamont in the ship's doctor's costume. I was like, what are you doing here? He said, I shouldn't be here. I'm the art director. I'm the production designer, excuse me. He said, and I started asking about the carpets and the wicker chairs, because of course I was totally fascinated with all that stuff. He says he'd done a bunch of Jim shows, and he's just like, Jim always makes me get dressed up and be in the film. So I guess it's just the thing. You don't.
That's an ensemble. That's like a repertory company. And some people will talk about Hollywood nepotism, but I don't think that's true at all. I think it's a case of you work with the people you know, you like, and you trust. And you're obviously in that circle of knowing, liking, trusting.
Well, it's kind of giving people skin in the game as well. It's like, okay, you better do your job well, because you're going to be in it. Your face is going to be up there too.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, it's not. I don't mean that in a negative way. I think it's just like you said. We're all putting on a show. I did high school drama and did all sorts of show building sets and everything else. So I know that kind of camaraderie.
And it's paying it forward. Ultimately, it's paying it forward.
Yeah. And if you don't suck, you'll get invited back. I mean, it's just a fact. I'm constantly, there's a couple of not under any circumstances will I hire that person again. But most people are, in an industry, like I said, which it requires all of this passion and focus is there. That's what I hope this conversation is about, is demonstrating not just the training and the talent, but the willingness and the openness and passion as
well, the connections as well. One of the other people that I was a friend with, as was Ed, and we brought on to the show as well, was Anders Falk, who was another schoolmate of mine, and another one who came and joined us from USC through me, my connection was Steve Quayle. So
yeah, you all come up together
yeah,
and
full
then
circle.
Yeah.
Full
So we
circle.
all
So tell us
ended up working together.
what are you
know.
working on now, Van? Give us a little plug for the your background there, which is apparently New Mexico for Greece.
We can't trust you. We can't trust
Yeah.
you to be
Anything's
where you look
possible.
like you are.
Well, I do have some more interesting Titanic related stuff if you're interested, but if
just give us
we need to wrap it up,
one more Titanic anecdote, because I know our listeners will be gripped.
Well, the very first time I met with Jim and we were talking about this stuff, and he was talking, because we were doing the Abyss, so it was going to be underwater and research and stuff. There was they had just discovered the Titanic wreck the year before, and Jim was saying, do you know of anybody, that's, with Woods Hole or anything, I think. And I said, well, my mom and my dad both went to MIT, and as alums, I know on the calendar there was a seminar here in El Segundo, California, with Dana Yorger, who was one of the mechanical engineers who designed the Jason ROV that went down Titanic, the same way that the ones in the Abyss and the ones in Titanic were done, the remotely operated vehicles. And Jim said, hey, do you think you can get me into that seminar? So it was me and my mom and Jim going into the seminar, where it was, I think, one of the first times he had direct contact with somebody who, was on the Titanic expedition. And I wonder if there was any kind of, thought process that, came out of that, which resulted in.
I've heard that he actually, yes, he was a Titanic historian and enthusiast, and he wanted to make that film. But one of the other driving forces was that he wanted to have the budget to go down to the wreck and film it with those ROVs, because that was, he knew he had to do the present day version, and that got him down to the wreck. So, and it started with your mom.
I would think you started out our conversation today telling us about the Thursday night series with filmmakers when you were in school. And to me, I feel like you're our guest at one of those Thursday night sessions. You're a natural storyteller, you're a natural teacher, and and leader, and we're all the better for it.
There's so much more we could be talking about with, the Chinese sailors, who we've actually explored that story here with Stephen Schweiker, who made this.
Yes. I heard that podcast.
I did make the connection that, yes, you are in Ship of Dreams Titanic Movie Diaries, because there's that wee clip of you getting your icicles.
What's interesting is how many layers down this goes is I became Jim's Laserdisc DVD guy, or Laserdisc back when we were doing this stuff, and then DVD. I did how many special edition versions of. I produced the special edition of The Abyss for him, the actual film version.
The extras, the extra bits.
And all the extra bits, but also the special edition version, the long version of the movie, as I also did for Terminator 2 before I had gone off on my own. And so I had all this experience doing those kind of things. So after Titanic came out and we did the film and all of this, and it became the hit it was, and they were going to do the first DVD collector's edition for Titanic, they called me to do that.
Of course.
And so Ed was working on it and shooting interviews with all these folks. They brought me in as the special edition producer, and we created all of these. I created all those pods of those little video clips.
Yes.
We edited all those. I did all the visual effects. Casey and I, our little company. At that point, it was Ranchworks. We did all the visual effects, 92 shots for the deleted scenes, because they needed visual effects as well.
Yes.
And that's in addition to the 52 shots we ended up doing on the original film, which was hilarious because we were this small company and we were like number 5 in the credits out of 18 effects houses that worked on it. So we were so proud.
Yeah,
work
and
on
as
it.
you should be, as you should be. What a legacy, Van! Thank you so much. I think when we do season 3, you have to come back for like a do-over and fill in some of this stuff, because I'm sure there are just so many more stories that we don't have time for. But thank
Where
you.
do we find you?
So much.
Where do we find you? Where do we keep up with you?
I'm ensconced in writing. I did my first feature film as a director is its own historical tragic romance. It was called Cliffs of Freedom, and it's a historical romance drama that is available, I think, on Amazon and other places. So if you're interested, you can check it out. And I actually and Billy Zane's in it. So we got to talk about the Titanic days.
Degrees of separation. Degrees of separation.
Exactly.
Well, Van, I'm going to have a Halloween party this year, and I'm inviting you.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic.
We're so grateful,
Take
Van.
care.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review. And if you'd like to hear more podcasts like this, hit the subscribe button. For information on where you can see Ship of Dreams, Titanic Movie Diaries, go to shipofdreamsfilm.com. Titanic Talk is a production of Ship of Dreams Film Limited. To celebrate Season 2 of Titanic Talk, we've launched a line of Titanic Talk merch. A cap, a mug, a tote, a t-shirt or a hoodie. You'll be sure to find a unique gift for the Titaniac in your life. Look for the link in the notes and on Instagram, or go to bit.ly/Titanic Talk Shop.